Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Okay, here we are, once again gathered together for another big episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scott McKay, coming at you from San Antonio, Texas. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that's going to be pretty incendiary on purpose, and that's women who are easily offended. And we've all met some of those nowadays, even perhaps on Twitter or on Facebook. We know they're out there. If we have not seen them in the wild, they're women we're afraid of meeting, hoping we'll never meet them. If we do happen to cross their paths in real life, all of us know it sometimes gets pretty ugly. So why not talk about this, take the gloves off, figure out who these women are, how to deal with them in real life, how to be gracious perhaps. And with me today is a friend of mine I've known for probably a decade now. He's a 5-time #1 Amazon bestseller, Dirty Dog, one more than me. And he's also a P90X guy, a health and fitness coach. And he right now is based in the beautiful town of Medellin, Colombia. His name's Joe Bovino. Joe, how's it going, man?
Hey, Scott. It's going well. Thank you.
Well, how can it not be going well? You're in Medellin, Colombia. Home of beautiful
paradise.
Women, great food, good beer. Got it all. Good weather.
Yeah, I love it here.
Beautiful scenery. Lots of bulletproof cars still lining the streets in Medellin, Colombia after all these years.
And I have a bulletproof door on my apartment, believe it or not.
Well, that's just cool. I mean, every guy should have a bulletproof door just to say he does.
I didn't put it in. It was there when I moved in.
No, that's an extra bonus. You didn't even have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. Just to give these guys a little bit of an introduction about who the hell you are. You've done P90X for years. That's how you kind of burst onto the scene. You're a health and fitness coach, and you've also written a series of books that kind of take a lighthearted but very honest and perhaps masculinized view of what women are like, how to spot different women based on different traits. And the book that I first saw that was by you, I met you through basically, was one that you called The Field Guide to Chicks of the United States, where you coined the term Chicaspotting.
Mm-hmm.
And you wrote this book kind of in the vein of an Audubon field guide for bird watching.
That's right.
Yeah, but you made it Chicaspotting, and you had these different types of women and had an artist draw a cartoon rendering of each one of these kind of women, and you made them all, just brick house women with hips and ass and tits, and they were just amazingly hot. And I actually ended up borrowing your artist and getting to know him really well. His name's Karsten Mell, and he's actually the designer of the logo for this show. Mm-hmm. So if any guy is kind of imagining what the women look like in Chicaspotting, just take a look at the rather attractive blonde woman who's on the album art for this particular show, and you have your idea. So that's kind of an interesting connection. You connected me with Karsten, and I've now worked with him for probably 8 years now.
A point about that, one thing I learned as I was putting the book together with Karsten is that if the illustrations were too cartoonish, the guys turned off completely. But if they were too realistic, the women turned off completely. You couldn't get any women to read it. Guys loved it.
Yeah, Karsten has a good knack for drawing very realistic women, but they're still artistic renderings. Yeah, so it's not like a Charlie Brown, Peanuts, or a Dilbert kind of cartoon. No. It's more of a photorealist cartoon, but a cartoon nonetheless. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. And you went on to write another book called Chicaspotting, which talked about different kinds of Latinas. And man, that brought out all the feminist haters, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I expected some blowback from my books because I really wasn't interested in being politically correct. I was trying to be funny. And in order to be funny, you have to be critical. There's criticism in all humor and truth in most of it. But and my first book received a lot of criticism too. The Huffington Post wrote a review of it, my first book, saying it may be the worst book ever. That was yeah, I know. Like there's Mein Kampf and then there's Field Guide to Chicks. It was a tough call. And so that I got some, and Jezebel went after me too, but that was bad enough. But Chicaspotting, which really was just focusing on Latin American chicks, Latinas in the United States. And the reason I did it is because I had a lot of great material in my first book, and I didn't think Latinas realized they were in there. They figured it was all about white chicks, and it wasn't. So I wrote one book just about Latin American chicks. I was living in Miami. I had all this great information, and I put it out there as a short book. And oh my God, I didn't even know some of these women existed. For example, I'd always gotten along really well with Latinas in Miami and in Los Angeles. But there are feministas in New York where you've got this mix of this Latina passion and feminism. And oh my God, were they vile. Not only did they come after me in the book, they tried to get the book banned from Amazon. They started a campaign, and it went on for some time. And they littered the page with 1-star reviews, and they tried to get Amazon to take it down. Amazon, to its credit, did not take the book down. And it was called every name in the book. And you know what? I'm sitting in Medellin. I love Latinas. The book is not, I think the book is complimentary for the most part. I wrote a book about something I loved. And yes, there's humor and all that, but they weren't interested in the humor. They were just, I'm a white guy writing about brown women, so therefore I must be evil. I must be, there's something wrong with me. It's inappropriate. That's wrong. They just hammered me just because, really, I'm a white male who wrote a book with some humor about Latinas. That was it. They didn't care it was in there.
Well, first of all, I would personally wear criticism from Jezebel like a badge of honor. Kind of like getting a merit badge in the Boy Scouts. You kind of get to wear this little, hey, Jezebel didn't like my work. I would think I must be doing something right if I got criticism from them. They say good press and bad press. All press is good press, right? How did that help the book sales or hurt them? I mean, was there a measurable difference in how many books you were actually selling after these women came after you?
Yeah, the Chicaspotting book sales went way up because the book was available when they were criticizing it. Now, they really did drag the rating down, though. I mean, it went from 5 stars, where it was from people who actually read it, to, for a while it was down at like 2 because they were pummeling it with 1-star reviews. They weren't reading the book. They were responding to the idea of it. And, when you have low stars, people don't want to buy it. There's a lot of people that just won't do it. So the sales went up for a while, but then those stars never really came back up. It's like 3.5 now. So, yeah, I got a bump, but it didn't last forever. The sales have dropped off. With Field Guide to Chicks, when Jezebel and Field Guide to Chicks United States, when I wrote that, when Jezebel and HuffPost came after me, the book wasn't even out yet. They saw the cover. We had a publicist who put a little blurb together. They sent the cover of my book and a little blurb that she wrote, which was awful. And I had a FAQ page on the website, and they just used that, and they tore it apart. And the book didn't come out for 4 months. So it didn't help sales at all. It was killing me that the book wasn't available because everybody was talking about it. I was being hammered. And I'm like, wait a minute, you don't understand. This is a humor book. This is not what they're saying it is. And I had to wait. So that was tough.
Yeah, so you couldn't really capitalize on the publicity you were getting because the book wasn't out yet.
That's right. Yeah. I have a quick story about Jezebel if you want to hear it.
I'd love to hear it.
Okay. So she wrote Lindy West. She's a famous feminist who writes lots of nasty things about people. But she hammered me. Again, not reading the book because it wasn't out. But you wouldn't know that when you read the review. It seemed like she'd read it. Anyway, so she writes this horrible review. And I thought, you know what? She doesn't realize what this book is. There's a lot of humor in this book. Maybe she's got a sense of humor. So I had a new publicist. He said, don't do anything about it. Leave it alone. I said, no. I reached out to her. I said, hey, Linda, have you read the book? I don't think you have. Let me send you a copy. And then maybe you'll review it again, or at least we'll have a conversation. I got a nice email back. So I think I sent her a link to it or something. And then a lot of time went by. Nothing happened. I don't think she ever read it, right? Never. She just blew it off. Well, years later, I think, or maybe a year and a half later, I saw that she wrote a post. She had a post about, it's called like what it's like to be fat on a plane. Right. And I have one of the chicks in Field Guide to Chicks is basically the fat chick. I call her the Big Bang. And I didn't say, yeah, I know. And I didn't call her fat. I said Rubenesque.
Rubenesque.
Right, Rubenesque. But the illustration that Karsten, came up with, I have her on a plane, sitting next to another girl who's squashed up against the window. And I'm thinking, maybe this Lindy, what a coincidence. I'll just send this to her and say, look, I even wrote about this, and I think it's pretty funny. What do you think? So I was very naive in this way. I actually thought she might see the humor in it. I wasn't trying to offend her, and I sent it to her. Well, I didn't hear anything back, but what they did do was they took my concept, Field Guide to Chicks, and they came out with, this is Jezebel, they came out with Field Guide to Basic Bitches, right? So they pummeled me, right, with the review. Horrible. They come out with their own post, Field Guide to Basic Bitches, and then they had Field Guide to Bros. And those two posts became top 10 posts for Jezebel that year. So what they did was they copied me. So they say they hate me, but they took the concept and copied me. I read them. They're cringeworthy. This is not real humor. This is snarky feminist humor. But that's what they did. So anyway, that's what are you going to do?
Well, that's kind of the pattern among people who are easily offended, is they feel entitled to the feelings they have. You caused this. It's your fault. Political correctness, of course, dictates that what matters is a person's reception of whatever you say or do, not your intent in actually saying it or doing it. So right. You said or did something that was offensive. They're the oppressed ones. They're the weak ones. And of course, this is one of my criticisms of feminism, is that it talks about empowering women, but in reality, they latch on to weakness whenever it's convenient for furthering their narrative, of course. So here you have a situation where you have disempowered women, you've offended women, even though you're probably saying lots of nice things about Latinas or women in general, depending on which book we're talking about here. They come back with, oh, but look at this line. You actually hate us and you think we're horrible. So they get offended by that one line, and the next thing you know, they have appropriated for themselves the right in their minds to treat you however they would like to treat you, because after all, you deserve it because you started this, you launched the opening salvo, you're this terrible person and we're going to beat you down. And, you may not have meant to offend anybody. You may have been writing it all about humor, but the next thing you know, they just are all about destroying you, destroying your character. Hurting your feelings is not even a concern. Men don't have feelings, by the way.
Right.
And anything goes because it's all about furthering the narrative. It's all about the cause. And as you were telling me the story about having tried to reach out to this author and send her the book, I already know how the story is going to end, because it's not about you and it's not about her. It's about a certain agenda they have and sticking to it regardless of the human collateral damage involved.
The hypocrisy, though, look, I think everybody's entitled to their opinion and all that. And I did know that a book would offend some, but the hypocrisy of writing a review like that and then copying it, doing the same thing, but in an unfunny way, is just over the top. It's just, how can you do that? In hindsight, because it's been a few years, I look at it and I go, they were just trying to, get people trying to get eyeballs on their posts. They don't care. They don't care about me. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about whether the book is any good or not. They have an agenda, like you said, and that's what they were pushing. And, some of that is understandable. I look back on it now. I laugh at it. I just wish the book was available when they were coming out with that stuff, the Field Guide to Chicks.
Well, indeed, it's all about moving eyeballs. You have an audience. Yes. That audience is hungry for the kind of content they came to see. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting nowadays, and I was just reading a piece on this morning, so this is very timely. Back in the 80s and the 90s, when the Republican Party in the United States was talking about family values, if anybody misstepped morally within the party, they were gone. We found out you had an extramarital affair 20 years ago. You cheated on your wife. Well, you got to resign, man. You're right. A bad guy. Get out of here. Meanwhile, the president, who's a Democrat, is having sex with his intern in the Oval Office and gets to stay there. He was impeached, but the Senate didn't follow through on it, and Bill Clinton stayed in office. Well, that's because, at that point in history, the Democrats were more about not legislating morality, and if it feels good, do it, that sort of thing.
Right.
Well, nowadays, the tide has turned, here in the United States and indeed in Western Europe and in lots of modern democracies, such that it's the left that has zero tolerance for failure to abide by the narrative. Mm-hmm. So what you have are situations where people on the left have such a strict regard for political correctness. If you deviate in any way, shape, or form from that standard, that golden standard of political correctness, and you do anything that can be perceived by anybody as untoward, and you're branded a racist, or you're branded a sexist, or God forbid you're branded a capitalist, they get rid of you. Mm-hmm. So, basically they've been trying to characterize political opponents as these horrible racist people. But what has inevitably happened is they're starting to eat themselves, because nobody's perfect. Give anybody enough time and you're going to find something in their past where they weren't exactly politically correct. So what's good for the goose has to be good for the gander. If you're going to try to pin things on the opposition party, well, at some point, the Democrats are going to have to pin the tail on the donkey also, literally.
What gets sacrificed on the altar of political correctness is humor.
Absolutely.
I see it all the time. In my books, I was trying to make a cultural point. I love all this cultural stuff. I don't know if we addressed it, but Feel Guide to Chicks was about making sure guys knew that they had options, right? I've dated all kinds of girls. I'd lived in LA and New Jersey, and I was living in Miami. I was meeting all these Latinas. And I wanted to like write a book that brought out the differences in terms of what they identified with, differences in how they looked, but also guys they dated, what worked with this one and that one, and just have to say it in a fun way, like cultural predispositions, tendencies, that sort of thing. But there was a lot of humor in that. And so that's what really pissed them off, is that you can't be making jokes about this. This is very, very serious. This has to be done this way. And I see it on social media a lot too. On Twitter, for example, some of the people that I enjoyed the most, because they were a little outrageous and I thought funny, clearly trying to be funny, right? They're gone. I was on the Gavin McInnes show a couple of times. He had a show on his own show. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but oh my God, the guy was so funny. Well, he's gone. He's gone. They demonized him and deplatformed him. But there's some others too. And I noticed on Twitter, like, this one's gone, that one's gone, and pretty soon you're just left with the serious stuff. And even then, you can't go too far. So, I object to all of it. I just think, I was a lawyer. I gave up my law career, full-time law career, to write and do creative things. I wanted my own voice. I'm not giving that up easily. Nope. So,
well, what's interesting? You're bringing up this idea of humor. If you're offended, it's not funny.
Right.
You're taking things gunfighter serious. As you were talking, I was reminded of examples like Kathy Griffin, who is allegedly a comedian. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen Kathy Griffin do anything funny since Trump was elected. It's all been very hateful rhetoric about how offended she is. I mean, what's funny about that? If that's the definition of being a comedian nowadays, then we have indeed completely lost all sense of comedy. Now, the interesting part is if you go to the right and turn on Fox News Channel on Saturday night, you'll see Greg Gutfeld. Mm-hmm. And Greg Gutfeld is hilarious. And Greg Gutfeld is a very much right-leaning satirist who's very quick on his feet. It's a comedy hour talking about how left and right politics have interacted for that week. You will never find anything like that on CNN or MSNBC because their audience are the ones who want to be offended and go, oh my gosh, this is so wrong. I am so angry about this. We got to do something about this. We got to stop it. And they start thinking they're working towards social justice and all they're doing is getting angry. And like I said, what happens is when people are easily offended and when they get angry, it's only a matter of time before they get angry and offended at each other. Right. I have guys who I coach and they'll come to me and they'll say, I was dating this woman and I just couldn't do anything right. I was trying to crack jokes and she would just get more upset at me. What did I do wrong? And we as men want to be providers and protectors. We want our women to be happy and for them to feel safe. So when they don't feel that way and we feel like we've pretty much done everything we could to help them feel safe and secure and they're only more angry and more bitter, we end up trying to take the blame for that, saying, man, where did I fall short? But the problem is women who are easily offended suck. People who are easily offended suck. They're not easy to get along with. it's not really our fault when they can't come to grips with anything in terms of a simple conversation that may not be aligned with how they think about things. You know, there's women who are like, look, if you voted for Donald Trump, don't bother. There's women who show up on dates with a checklist. Do you believe this? Do you believe that? If you don't believe in this, I can't date you. And what's a guy to do? Well, the proof of the pudding is that these people end up getting angry at each other. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's a movement where the LGBTQIA folks are starting to infight. Now, these people, of course, have been united in getting rights for people who aren't cisgendered heterosexuals for years. And that's a good fight. There's good, solid reasons for that. But where the wheels fall off is when people who are lesbian or gay are fighting with the transgender crowd over what to do with children who aren't comfortable being cisgendered. Well, my little girl wants to identify as a little boy. Well, let her grow up and be a lesbian. Oh, no, you've got to let her transition to being the gender she wants. So now, behind closed doors, the trans crowd, the T in LGBT, is actually at odds with the LGB and the LGBT over what to do about these children. And they're feeling offended and hurt by the agenda of the other side. And they're realizing they don't match up as well as they thought they did. This is fascinating to think about because those folks have been aligned for so long, but have been very easily offended by a lot of things. And that's how it's come out. You know, if you're a white heterosexual man, you need to sit down and shut up. You don't have any rights. You shouldn't be able to talk about sexuality at all. I saw a tweet that said, if you are a man and you're unwilling to date a trans woman, unfollow me. It's like, well, yeah, you know, I have my own sexual preference. I don't hate transgendered people, but I also do not want to have sex with a woman who has a penis. And that should be my choice. I shouldn't be demonized because of that. And I think that's a rational opinion. But when someone is driving an agenda so as to not feel marginalized anymore, then they throw a hissy fit over it and they get offended. This seriousness that you're talking about that's associated with being easily offended, I think is a very real thing. Whereas sense of humor is what makes people, well, easier to get along with, more fun to relate to. They're the people we want to spend our life with, not these serious, bitter people.
And that goes for trans people too. Sure. I have some friends, acquaintances, and also people that have written me who are trans and have a sense of humor, like the books, get a kick out of it, ask me questions. As long as you have a sense of humor about life and about yourself, don't take yourself too seriously. Those are the people we want to be around. The problem with liberals, progressives, whatever, that get so easily offended, they don't stop by getting offended. Then they want to change you. You have to stop. That's the part I don't like. They want to force you to behave or stop doing something. Do whatever you want. Even be offended if you want. Just leave me alone. I want to do my thing, whatever that is. That's where I think the problem is for me. It's not just they get offended. It's that they want to take it that extra step and get in your face. And
well, in all fairness, I really don't think either side of the political spectrum holds a monopoly on being offended. I mean, there are people on the right who think you should sit down and shut up because, you want this change to happen or you don't want a wall to be built at our southern border, and they get all offended over it too.
That's true.
What I would interject into this conversation at this point is a quick reminder that these angry people who are easily offended are typically a very small minority of the total population, but they're very angry and they're very vocal and they're very passionate. So they grab the microphone, and the next thing you know, everybody on Twitter thinks, this is the way the world must be revolving nowadays because this is all people can talk about. Well, Donald Trump, for example, if you look at one of Donald Trump's tweets, and, a lot of his tweets are misspelled. They're not written in very effective English. Even if you're a conservative, sometimes Donald Trump's tweeting patterns will drive you absolutely nuts. Very few of his tweets get ratioed, if any. In other words, you may see 6,000 negative comments telling him, resign now, you fat orange bastard, but there were going to be 100,000 likes. 100,000 little hearts clicked. So everybody's reading these negative views of what Donald Trump wrote and ignoring the fact that 3 or 4 times as many people, even on a liberal leaning platform like Twitter, liked the tweet, for gosh sakes. You don't heart the tweet if you don't agree with what's being said. It's just that when people are angry and they're demanding something, they're a lot more visible. And this goes for women and men who prefer to have normal, easygoing relationships with each other. Mm-hmm. Most women still want men to be men. Of course, most of us as men still love feminine women. I've shown my wife your book in the past, and my wife is half Latina, and she thought it was hilarious. She thought it was really cute. I was hiring your artist, and so I showed her examples of his work, which of course was your book. And she was going through it, just giggling and laughing and going, oh my God, this is absolutely so true. This guy nailed it. Because, we have to take ourselves less seriously in this life or our heads are going to explode. And that's what's going on. It's not a happy, fun life to be easily offended all the time. And you ready for this? Here's the bomb. I'm about to drop a bomb on this whole conversation. Let's be honest, guys. Why are we trying to appease these women? Why are we trying to earn these women's favor when none of us want to be dating an easily offended woman anyway because they suck, and not in the good way, right?
Plus, in my experience, they like you more if you just be yourself. If you're I think if a guy is comfortable with who he is and feels good about that and just says what he thinks, you may piss them off, but they respect you if you don't back down. That's been my experience.
Well, getting back to your own lesson learned from trying to send a book to that author on Jezebel. If you try to say, I'm sorry, if you try to appease them, they just get angrier. Mm-hmm. They don't like you. They don't go, oh, you know what? You're not that bad a guy. I really apologize. They're not going to apologize because it's an agenda. And you know what I'll add to that? Here's something else for guys to think about. Not only should we stop trying to appease women we don't want to date anyway, we got to remember something. People who are hiding behind the anonymity of the internet, or people who are even hiding behind the rather temporary potential anonymity of an online dating app or an online dating site, are often cowards. Okay? Women in particular live in a world where they fear a lot. I think a lot of guys miss that. This whole idea of women being safety and security seeking creatures, I think that's lost on guys because most of us don't go walking around fearing for our physical security. But women, when they go out with a guy, they're wondering, is this guy going to hurt me? Is he going to rape me? Is he going to do something untoward? So we as guys indeed do really well to be sensitive to that. That said, when a woman gets riled up and she decides she doesn't like men, she has an agenda that she wants to get across. And of course, if anybody can't tell you why they believe a certain way, and they just tell you to sit down and shut up, and it's because you're a white male, or they go ad hominem on you right off the bat, it's because they're just parroting back what someone told them to think. It's not their own real, thought out belief system. Mm-hmm. Of course, this is happening more and more as politics basically replace religion in this secular humanist society, but that's a different show. Mm-hmm. What you have is a situation where when people want to be easily offended and they want to go try to take somebody on and shoot their vitriol out, they go for low-hanging fruit. They go for friendly targets they know aren't going to insult them back and who are going to try to diffuse the situation and be Mr. Nice Guy about it. So it's as if the nicer you are, the more conciliatory you are, the more they're going to pile on. Joe, you wouldn't believe the amount of email I get from angry women who are reading my emails to men. Now, every one of you guys who is on my email list probably just chunder-gusted Bud Light at your keyboard hearing me say that. Because if you've read my emails, I'm incredibly woman-friendly. I believe men and women should get along. I'm raising empowered daughters. My little girl is a BMX champion and wears a helmet and does extreme sports. And I believe she can be an astronaut or president or whatever she wants to be someday. I'm very pro-woman. My wife and I have a wonderful relationship where we get each other and respect each other. So if you're going to write me and tell me, this is something you brought up earlier, you are like literally Hitler for saying that women, should learn how to give men better blowjobs. How dare you? It's like, well, in my mind, a lot of women would love to know how to give their man better blowjobs.
Mm-hmm.
I want a woman who gives better blowjobs, and I would think my woman would be a lot happier if I know how to give her oral sex more effectively. But, these women are looking for a fight, and they're picking it with me because they know I'm a good, decent guy, and I'm not going to write them back and tear them a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Nowadays, I don't even write them back because of what you learned. It's not going to end well. They're looking for an agenda. They're looking for a fight. But boy, do I feel sorry for whoever these women are trying to date or whoever they're married to, because, man, that guy's just got to be walking on eggshells simply to salvage his own existence in an environment like that.
Well, Scott, one of the reasons I moved to Medellin was just for a change. There's no, the women down here, there isn't a lot of confusion about between the men and the women. They like men to be men, and they're highly and proudly feminine, right? It's not
as is
easy.
Most of the world.
Yeah,
the women in most of the world.
Yeah, and look, the women here can be difficult. There's a language barrier. There's some cultural things. But the things that you've been talking about, this kind of outrage over really nothing, the loss of a sense of humor because of political correctness and all these things, it just doesn't exist down here in the same way. It's not really a consideration. And it's nice.
Well, I would also remind the listeners that despite the raw truth of what you're saying, I don't think we should lose all hope for women here in the United States, Canada, and Western Europe, UK. Remember, it's a very small vocal minority out there who are ruining it for the rest of us. Most women here in the United States love men. They're very easygoing. You can talk to them. They're not going to be offended if you flirt at a low level with them. I have guys come here for 10 plus lives, and we flirt with women all weekend. And yes, I am a married man, and my wife has given me her blessing to teaching men how to do this. I don't disrespect my wife. I don't get sexual with women out there. I just appreciate the fact that they're female. Mm-hmm. And I act like a guy, and women eat this up. And in 13 years of taking men out infield, my perspective of giving women space, being friendly, being warm, right, making the conversation light, not talking about dark or sexual topics, has a 100% success rate. Women act like women. They appreciate the conversation. I've never had my head bitten off by a woman who was offended by my very existence. But if you get on Twitter, you would think the entire world has gone in that direction. It's very, very sobering to actually get out and talk to women in real life and realize most of us are still men and women. In a recent blog post that I did, one of the things I talked about is this idea of the agendas you're seeing trying to take us away from being masculine. All your masculinity is toxic, whereas women are actually teaching their girls how to be virtuous in the masculine sense. If you watched the Super Bowl recently in the United States, terrible game, terrible commercials, not really much redeeming value there, but there were at least 3 incidences within that one football game of lionizing the idea of girls playing tackle football. There were 3 discrete instances of that. That's amazing because all you hear about tackle football in the mainstream media and among feminists is this is killing our boys. I don't want to let my boy play football. It's feeding aggression. It's feeding toxic masculinity. Yet all of a sudden we're having girls play tackle football. Well, you see that. You see the lionization of homosexuality and the demonization of being a heterosexual male. Well, there's too many people on this planet. They've probably already figured out scientifically how to expand our lifespan significantly, and we need fewer people. We need the birth rate to drop. So it's really a war on procreation. But the joke's going to be on them because you can't stop the most powerful force in the universe, which is sex. I mean, people are still going to screw each other's brains out. People are still going to be horny, and people are still going to be horny heterosexually. There's no stopping it, even though the political agenda writers think they're a couple chess moves ahead making it happen. So all this idea of being offended towards heterosexuality, that women don't like men anymore, men going their own way. Hey, look, all you MGTOW guys, the joke's on you. You've been swindled. This is all a bigger agenda, a couple chess moves ahead of you. All the women who you perceive are taking everything from you, and you as a man not wanting to be with them anymore. Hey, That is no different than the women who are feminists saying all men are jerks. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. This whole idea of driving a wedge between men and women is a master plan of us not procreating. Mm-hmm. And masculinity and femininity are the building blocks of sexual attraction. You take masculinity and femininity out of the picture or switch the roles, then allegedly what you do is keep men and women from being attracted. You keep the procreation from happening. But like I said, you're fighting a tidal wave that the very future of our entire human race depends on, and they're not going to win. That's just not going to happen. So all of us as guys, stop trying to attract women who are easily offended, thinking you have to somehow appease them or you haven't done your manly duty of providing and protecting. Hey, it's them, not you. You can find women in the United States who are very sweet, very kind, and are looking for a real man. I'm not going to argue against the fact that there are geographical pockets like in the Northeast or in certain parts of California where you may have a harder time finding a woman who hasn't bitten off that agenda. Okay. Mm-hmm. But here in Texas, I meet almost no women like that.
Right.
I've been all over the world. My experience internationally is much like yours have been. The women love to be feminine. It's almost like an international language, masculinity and femininity, right?
Yeah, and I would just say to be clear, I agree with you. I wrote about women of the United States. I didn't write about women from Colombia. Right. I love my country. I still love the United States. I don't live here in Medellin full time. I come for several months a year, and then I'm back in the States, and I travel around. And when I wrote Feel Good at Chicks and Chicaspotting, those were about women of the United States, the different, subcultures, because there's so many great women. And I agree with you. I could be just as happy living there, but I would be selective. Like you said, I'm not going to go for the one who gets easily outraged. I'm not going to waste my time there. I'm going to deal with it and move on, because you gotta make choices, right?
Yeah. Be easygoing, love women, find women who love you, who are easygoing. And, just let all those people who are easily offended and looking for a fight to pick, let them hang out with each other. You're already seeing the infighting going on. Somebody is demonized for something they did that was deemed to be untoward from a political correctness perspective. The next thing you know, someone else who wants to be offended is offended that the very person who was being so offended is guilty of the exact same thing 20 years ago, and they end up in a circular battle chasing each other's tail, and everybody's just left watching these people who allegedly were on the same page tearing each other a new one.
Right.
Guys, just stay out of the fray. If someone tries to pick a fight with you being easily offended, stay out of it. And here's another hint, gentlemen. I don't care what it's about, unless it's about a life and death situation or your very character is being threatened in a way where you need to salvage your public reputation. If a woman is picking a fight with you, just stay out of it. You're not going to win. You don't want to respond to her physically, obviously. I don't care if she's throwing plates at you like in The Godfather. Walk away. You're not going to win a physical confrontation with a woman. It will always end badly for you as a man. And if a woman is picking fights with you, unless it's a situation where your very character is at stake, especially on a public perspective, on a public stage, just walk away. Just stay out of it. That's masculine strength. It's not masculine weakness. And don't let her bait you into it. Just stay away from those situations.
Right, because we can't care about everything, right? Somebody's opinion of you. My mother says, used to say, just mind your own business, and what other people think of you is not your business. And so there's enough going on in our lives to keep us busy and to worry about what some chick who's easily offended thinks about you or says.
Yeah.
Who cares? I mean, move on. Unless, like you said, you're in a public forum and it's emasculating. You really have to stand up for yourself. That's different. But most of the time, it's not like that. Most of the time, it's just some random comment or stupid insult, and you just move on. Who cares?
Yeah, a couple of things there. First of all, if you do have to stand up for yourself, stay objective. Don't go toe-to-toe with these ad hominem, hateful, offended arguments. Don't tear them down with name-calling because they did. Do what you got to do, say what you got to say, and then walk away. Also, and this is incredibly important, you're never going to make everybody happy. Guys, man, I have 250,000 people in my audience overall between podcasts and social media and my email list. Guess what? Not everybody's going to agree with me. And if they do, something's wrong. You can't please everybody all the time. You try to please everybody, you please nobody, right? If you're too conciliatory, you don't make an impact on this world. Everybody who's making an impact on this world has people who are trying to stop them from making that impact. Always remember that. And part of having emotional maturity and being a man of character is knowing where you stand, knowing what your central core belief system is, being able to account for why you believe it, and then not letting people who are different from you in their thoughts and their ideologies sway you on a whim. You can't say, okay, well, I'm going to try to agree with this person. Maybe they were right after all. No, they weren't. Stick to your guns. Yeah, right. Stick to my guns. That's social immaturity.
Mm-hmm.
That also shows you're immature in your identity. You don't know who you are. You haven't figured it out. And every man should go on that journey, figure out what he believes, what he's about, what his purpose feels like it should be, and then go hard after that ambition. And I'll tell you what, most red-blooded women are going to be turned on by exactly that, not by the milquetoast guy who tries to kowtow to easily offended people.
Right.
Joe, I want to talk about your other side gig you got going on here, which is actually your real gig.
Mm-hmm.
You're a guy who's in pretty good shape, and you weren't always in pretty good shape. As a matter of fact, you're in excellent shape.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a P90X guy. Your job description is mainly health and fitness coach. And you've got a new book out with a very auspicious title, which is The Sugar Belly Secret.
Right.
And in that book, you share some pretty outrageous, groundbreaking secrets on how to get the physique you want as a man, which I know personally, as we get a little older, becomes more and more difficult to manage.
Yes, and I'll try to tie this back to all that discussion of women, and political correctness, because as an expression, political correctness is a war on noticing, right? And my books were pretty much the books about chicks were about observing what's out there, the differences, right? And looking at the humor in it too. Well, when it comes to health and fitness, you can't help but notice that people are getting really, really fat and unhealthy, and it's causing all sorts of problems. I had a background. I was one of the cast members in P90X and was known from being in that, and one of the success stories early on. And I've managed to stay in shape as I've gotten older. I'm pretty old now. I was in P90X when I was 41. And anyway, so when it was time to write about something else, I'd written enough about chicks. I picked up decided to write about health and fitness and nutrition. And what I did was, I said, what can I do about this problem? I looked at what's out there, and I found what I think is the common denominator, the best practices of all the sort of diets and weight loss strategies out there. What are they? They all work. They all seem to work in the short term, right? You get an intervention, and then people have some results, and then they lose it. But how could it be that some low carb diets work and high carb diets work and all these different diets? How could it be that they work for a while? What is it? And that's what my book's about. Sort of the common denominator, simple things you can do. And basically, I'll tell you what it is. The Sugar Belly secret is this. It's a lot less sugar and sweeteners, okay? A lot more fiber. It turns out fiber is our secret weapon against sugar. And alcohol in moderation in certain types and not other types. And then one more thing. It's not necessary, but fasted morning cardio. That's the best way to lose weight quickly if that's what you want to do. So that's the basics of it. That's the secret. But what I get into in the book is it sounds easy, but it's not that easy because a lot of the sugar's hidden, where the fiber's gone. The alcohol is tricky. The exercise, you're being told this and that and the other thing. I just kept it real simple because what I want to do is really help with this very noticeable problem is that people are getting really fat, really cynical, and they're doing these trendy things, including trendy exercise programs. P90X is great, but it's not enough. And give something that actually works over a long period of time. And that's what the Sugar Belly secret is. And it's doing really well. I have a Facebook group and I have all kinds of success stories. I live it personally. I think it's better than keto. I'm sure keto is all the rage. Keto is great if you're very disciplined and you want to eat that way for life. I can't do it. I don't want to eat that way for life. And I'm not sure it's healthy long term. No offense to those of you who believe in it. My approach and strategy is much simpler. And it's making a difference. I hope the word gets out because I honestly want to help people. It's a big problem.
Well, clearly it's something you're very passionate about. It's a big part of your life. And, you're a Renaissance man. You do lots of things and you think about lots of different important subjects. So with that in mind, what I did was I set up a link to your Amazon authors page. So these guys can check out Sugar Belly Secret and check out Chicaspotting and Chicaspotting, all of which are worthwhile books. So I wouldn't want to send them to just one of them. So what I've done, guys, is I've created the URL www.mountaintopodcast.com/SBS for Sugar Belly Secret, because I'm not going to try to make you figure out how to spell bovino. And if I write sugar or belly, it's just going to, not read as well. So www.mountaintopodcast.com/SBS, and you'll see what Joe Bovino looks like and be able to get you some with all of his books, all of which are worthwhile. And this has been a fascinating conversation, Joe, and I appreciate you being on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And guys, listen, if you appreciate these very poignant episodes where we let the fur fly and we're not politically correct, write me and let me know. And hey, you know what? If you're offended, you can write me too, but I'll probably ignore you. So just a heads up there. But seriously, if you like what you're hearing, I need to hear from you. I want to know which kind of guests to have on, what kind of shows to do. We're always going to talk about women around here, but I always like to hear from you guys and find out what's on your mind. It's very important to me, so don't be shy. Leave your comments on the show notes page, which of course is www.mountaintoppodcast.com. While you're there, you can sign up to talk to me personally for 25 minutes. I just talked to one of you guys earlier this morning, and like many guys, he was kind of pleasantly surprised that I'm the guy you think I'm going to be. I'm down to earth. I'm not playing a fictional character on this show. My driver's license, my passport say Scott McKay on them. So you can sign up for 25 minutes to talk to me. We can talk coaching. We can talk about what's on your mind. No matter what, I like to have my finger on the pulse of what's going on with you guys out there. So it's good to talk to you. It's good to meet you. It's good to find out what's going on out there so I can tailor make these shows for you. And incidentally, while you're at mountaintopodcast.com, you can also sign up for my newsletter, which we've already established is fluff free. And we've also established that women who are angry and easily offended, looking for an easy fight, tend to write me with things they don't like about my newsletter, which if that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what else will. So go to www.mountaintopodcast.com and get all of those goodies, all for free, I might add. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X and Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X and Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.